G'day and welcome to Queensland Farmer. Well, before I kick off on today's video, I'd like to say thank you very much for those people that have subscribed to the channel. Just recently we got to 1,000 subscribers, which I'm really happy with, and it didn't happen unless you subscribed and you shared it and you commented on those videos. So again, thank you very much. The video today is about the garden and what's happening here. We've just reached winter. You can see that I've got some warm clothes on, starting to cool down. You might even see Sam with her jacket on as well. It's been a little bit cool here. Not cool enough to have a fire yet, but we'll have a fire sometime soon as we move towards winter, no doubt. So this orchard is looking pretty good actually. We've got these mango trees are growing nicely. Obviously we won't get fruit until the end of the year, but they're in that growth stage now, and I'm not sure if it's obvious or not, but there is some growth coming. So new leaves are emerging. So hopefully we'll have a good year this year. Last year was pretty ordinary. The year before was pretty good. So we went from maybe a couple of years ago, we had 200 mangoes out of our orchard. And then last year we might have had about 20. So anyway, the life of being a farmer, or the life of having an orchard, I guess. So you can see that we've kept the mulch pretty thick. I've done videos before on why we have mulching, or why we have mulch, and it's really about keeping those temperatures leveled off, keeping weeds at bay, creating that environment so you've got all that goodness growing, and as it breaks down it feeds the plants and the trees that are sort of covered by it. It obviously stops evaporation as well, so we don't have to use as much water. If we move just over here to this orange tree, you can see that it's looking pretty well. Now, they're not quite ripe, but I tell you what, they're getting pretty close. I've been having one every few days just to see when they're right. Now, this will be too many for us to eat, but as we slowly work through them, any surplus we have, I typically donate those to neighbours or friends. I don't like to see them rot on the ground. No good wasting food. Probably the biggest change that we've seen in our orchard is this passion fruit tree. This looked like it was going to die several times. We just couldn't get it to strike, but eventually it kicked off, and this is the results. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to put a roof over this so we can continue to grow the plant out horizontally. Give you an idea, here's a couple of passion fruits. And of course, one appears to have fallen on the ground here. I guess that's considered ripe. Oh, look at that. It is ripe, and I just see another one on the ground as well. They've got a nice thick covering, so being on the ground isn't the end of the world. They're falling onto mulch as well, which means they're not going to rot. Anyway, they're pretty good. The lychee tree here seems to be growing pretty well. You can see these coloured leaves here. This is new growth. If you have a look around this tree, there's plenty of new growth. So looking forward to a big year with lychees. Over here is a pomegranate plant. Now, I haven't had a lot of success with this, so if you've got any experts out there that know all about pomegranates, maybe if you can tell me what I'm doing wrong. It's just really not growing. I mean, there's a little bit of growth here, but compared to other things in the garden, this one doesn't really seem to be growing. It's staying alive, so that's a thing, but anyway, like I say, if you've got any experts there, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. We've got just a random tomato that happens with. We seem to grow tomatoes like weeds in this place. No idea how it got here, but probably a bird. So you'll see later that we just have oodles and oodles of tomatoes just pop up from nowhere. So this one here is a custard apple, and we planted this one maybe a couple of years ago. And you can see, here's one here which is looking pretty close to ripe, I think. So we'll have a go at that soon. They're not cheap when you buy them. I can see there by the sign that, you know, it's $70 to buy a plant, so it's absolutely worth looking after them. But if you've ever tasted this fruit, it's just beautiful. So it's well worth putting up with. Our biggest challenge here is keeping the birds off them. They often, the flocks of birds often come in here and they just completely take on a tree that's fruiting, and often it's just a competition to see who can pick it first, them or us. Speaking of birds, this is a pink guava tree, and it's not a fruit that I really like, so I don't typically eat it, but we get lots and lots of bird life come in and just completely destroy the fruit on this tree. I've seen 40 or 50 birds in the tree at once just going through it, so I don't really mind. Might as well give them something to eat, and hopefully they might leave other plants or trees alone, but I'm not sure it works like that, but it doesn't matter. I don't mind feeding the environment. Over here is a white guava, and really it's the same thing for that. We don't really eat them, but the wildlife does eat them, so we let them grow, we fertilise them, and as they grow it gives the wildlife something to eat. Got quite a few bopple nut trees as well. So this is one here. So bopple nut or macadamia nut, I guess it just depends on where you come from. So we've got quite a few of these, and we get the odd nut, but I'm just looking for one now to see if I can show you. And there aren't any on here. But certainly this is growing well. Gosh, it's almost getting too high now to get to. But as they drop on the ground, we often see them underneath the tree on top of the mulch. So it's certainly fairly easy to pick them up and then harvest the nut out of them. The only thing we have to worry about with these nuts is that Sam likes to grab them and throw them around, and she has a bit of a chew, and I believe nuts aren't very good for animals, so you can see she's doing that right now. She wants the nut to play. So we just need to make sure that she doesn't actually eat them. These are one of the emerging mango trees that we've got. Those other ones are quite well established. This one's still growing, but you can see it's full of leaves this year, so hopefully we'll do better this year, as last year we didn't get any fruit off that tree at all. We've got a mulberry tree here, which is going through that stage of dropping all the leaves. It does this typically for winter, so that's not the end of the world. I actually like this tree because often when I'm on the ride-on mowing along this area here, and there's fruit on, I'm able to have a quick feed as I drive past. I might even stop and reach up and grab a bit of fruit and then keep going. So that's always a bit of a treat for the mower man. This one's an olive tree, and this is another one that we don't actually harvest any olives off. It's been here, well, since we've been here, and I've got no plans to get rid of it. It just seems to be growing, and look, why not? Once again, plenty of mandarins on this tree. This tree just keeps giving and giving, so it's always nice to see this full of fruit, and they're really quite nice too. Plenty of good growth this year, and looking good. Then over to this pomelo tree. So, not a fan, but we have friends who like them. I think they use them in the Asian cuisine, and these people are Asian, so they love them. So when I get visits from them, I just tell them to bring bags with them. They can just take away as many as they can carry. Another interesting aspect of this pomelo is these huge thorns. So you can just see how long that thorn is. That certainly helps you not pick them. But nature has done pretty well with this, because I see right at the top of this tree, hopefully you can see it, there's a bird's nest in there. And the bird's obviously smart enough to get in there and drop some eggs and look after those eggs. And they're hoping that the predators aren't going to bother, given how prickly it might be to come and visit that nest. So nature at work. So these kaffir limes are obviously dropping all the fruit now. We just can't keep up with them. So it's awful to see them on the ground there, so I'll make sure that I pick them up very soon and see if I can distribute those around to other people that can use enough limes. We just don't use enough of them. We've got another orange tree just here, and that's a little bit greener than the others, so with a bit of luck, as the other ones finish producing good fruit, these ones will continue and we'll have it for a little bit longer. And then over here, inside that tyre, is avocado. Now the reason we put this in a tyre is this area around here is a little bit clayey as you get lower into the ground, and this avocado was actually shot from a seed, and the previous avocado that was there was also shot from a seed. But what happened with the previous one was that it grew and grew and grew to about this size, and then when its roots finally got into the clay soil, it simply died. So the research we did said you need to lift them up, and I just replaced a tyre on one of the tractors. I just thought we'd give that a go, see if just lifting it up just that little bit is enough to have this avocado grow and prosper and we can get some avocados from it. So time will tell. So this is our native bees that we put near the garden. There's a video back there if you want to see how we moved it. It was a bit of fun to do that actually, but seems to have worked out pretty well. It is pretty cool today, as I mentioned earlier, and you can see that despite that, these bees are out. Looks like they're just waking up. They've just had their little cup of bee coffee and they're heading out of the hive off to do some work. So normally on a hotter day, they'll come out of here by, in the tens, I suppose, at a time. But as I said, it is a bit cool, so probably just waking up, just denying how cold it is. But their close proximity to the garden and other things that we've got growing in the garden obviously is a very small trip for them to make to get what they need to continue to live and prosper. And just before we get to the garden, and given we're quite close to where the paddocks are now, this is Pangola, and the Pangola has responded extremely well this year with the weather and expanded into places I've not seen before. So Pangola is very much a really good food for cattle and they love it. I'd go as far as to say they crawl over broken glass to get to it. Of course, we'll never make them do that, but it's really popular. If you put the cattle into a paddock like this, they'll pretty much ignore everything else and go straight for the Pangola. And what we've got here is a dragon fruit. Now we probably haven't shown these plants before. We've got a few of these running. This year's been pretty good for them. Here's an example of how big they are. I mean, that's a pretty big fruit. If you've never tasted it, it's I think it's an acquired taste, but now that I've had a few of them, I really like them. If you have too many of them, they're a plant that might be described as high fibre, if you know what I mean. And you may or may not have seen these banana plants before. When I did the African tulip tree where I cut it down because it's really bad for bees, that African tulip is just to their left-hand side. And as you can see, it's dying very well indeed. Nothing really regrew, so I'm happy with that and didn't even use any poison on it. So that's terrific. But back to these bananas. Look, I don't think they're the world's healthiest bananas. We've not really done anything with them at all. We've got a few growing here, and these are what I describe as ladyfinger bananas, so they're not particularly huge, but they're pretty sweet. Typically, I haven't actually had any from here. You can see there's a bit of weight on this, and this plant is going to move over and fall over once they're right to be picked. And then what you do is you cut off the plant just near the ground level, and I normally just cut it up into, so I'll cut it and cut it and cut it. I just use a spade for that, and then I'll put that and put mulch around the bottom of the plant, and as that breaks down, that'll keep it moist and you get instant mulch from the exiting plant. So we really don't do anything with these, so I'm not surprised that it's not a high performer. But maybe next time we'll actually put some proper mulch around it and might actually add some fertiliser. It's sitting at the base, or very close to one of our dams. It's a very small dam. This one is just actually down below our house, so it's quite small. We get a few ducks and a few kangaroos sort of around this area, which is always nice to see. But we don't use this for anything other than just to look at and appreciate it when we get turtles come up out of here. It's always nice to see. So this area stays pretty wet, and maybe that's why these things are growing here. This is our pumpkin vine. We've got really two garden beds here. One is covered and the other one is open. We're just yet to cover it. And the covered one clearly does respond much better in winter and summer. So I think we just need to make the effort and finish off the other one. We've got lots of pumpkins out of here. I've actually got a short video that I'll release soon, give you a bit of an update of how many pumpkins that we've had out of here so far. Now, we are having a bit of a problem, and that is that we've got some insects coming in, grasshoppers and those sorts of things having a bit of a feed. Now, I watched a really good video the other day from Mark from Self-Sufficient Me, and he was talking about all of the different herbicides and the poisons that are used on plants that you buy commercially. And it got me thinking that that's just one more benefit of growing this stuff at home, is that we know what's been on this, and we've put no herbicides and no chemicals on it at all. We do add fertiliser, but it's typically natural fertiliser, as in a chook manure, that sort of thing. And obviously we put mulch on there as well. But that's it. So just another reason that is a good reason that if you want to grow this sort of stuff at home, it means you're not subject to what others may be spraying on their crop to keep these pests and diseases at bay. So look, we pay the price in terms of losing some foliage, but we do know what goes into it. And we've still got more pumpkins coming on. Be interesting at the end of the year to see how many we've got out of this area, because it's been terrific so far. So the turmeric, it looks like it's dying, and that's because that's what happens in winter. It's pretty typical that it'll just die out, and I think it's just that just normal cycle. So I'll just let it go. As the leaves fall down, of course, that just adds to a bit of mulch. That means that I will be able to go in and put some mulch on that area once all that foliage sort of dies off. It comes up very thick, so it's really hard to put any work in there or put any mulch in there when it's sort of full of foliage. And look, just while I'm here, look at this beautiful pumpkin just growing here. So the leaf, so here's one with a leaf, and then once that's done, and once our native bees do their job, this dies, it becomes fertilised, and then this pumpkin starts to grow. So it's really easy to grow. Just to get that soil right first with all that mulch that I keep talking about, but it makes a huge difference. So you probably know what that is. That's pineapple, and obviously Sam's interested in pineapple. She doesn't eat pineapple, but she's obviously keen to see what's happening underneath it. These don't need a lot of water, and we do very little care apart from throwing a bit of mulch around. This stuff here is asparagus. Now you can see that we've cut it right back. It does it'll go through a normal process, it'll grow up, and then you can pick those asparagus straight off the plant and eat them. And to be honest, not much of our asparagus ever makes it to the kitchen. It's just nice to have a bit of a feed while you're here. But it's pretty expensive to buy, so it's a really nice way to save some costs. This flower garden here, this one's for the bees. We put this in when my mum passed away, as a matter of fact, just to remember her. These were her favourite plants. The sweet potatoes have been in the ground for just over 2 months. If you haven't seen that video, go back and have a look and see how many we got, how many kilos we got. It was just amazing. And we're still giving that away. Look, the biggest challenge now is we keep water up to them when it doesn't rain, and that hasn't really been an issue. But the other issue is that we need to just go through and just put them back in the garden bed. These things are just incredible at times. They just grow and grow and grow, and if you let them, they will definitely come out of the bed and they would expand as big as this garden would be if you let them. So look, sometimes I even just break the end off to stop them growing in one particular direction. But this is all you need to do to maintain them at the moment, and like I say, throw a bit of water on there if things dry out, but that hasn't been an issue this year. So I spoke earlier about volunteer tomatoes. We had one over there in the garden. Every tomato that you see in this garden is a volunteer tomato. They just grow. They're seeds from previous tomatoes, and they just grow and grow and grow. And what we typically do is, some of them will leave growing, and you can see that they're growing in the compost heap and beside the compost heap. In those raised garden beds over there, some of those actually came from the cattle yards, which is right at the other end of the property. And I just can't imagine how tomatoes got up there, but somehow they did. And we thought, well, look, we'll move them while they're looking healthy, and we've put them in the garden beds. They've responded really well. So this year we're going to have a lot of tomatoes with a bit of luck. In fact, I think you can see some tomatoes down here. This compost heap's looking a bit shabby, to be honest. It's It's not really got a lot of compost in there. I just didn't want to get rid of this good food. We'll get rid of this blue top weed here. And look, here's some green tomatoes just growing. So we'll come and harvest those at some point. Oh gosh, the more I look at, they're just everywhere in here, and I just haven't had a chance to come and get them. But we'll get them. Now you move over here a little bit, and again, more tomatoes. And like I say, every one of those is a volunteer tomato, and that is, it just came up on its own. And I have found that that's the volunteer tomatoes are the ones that really seem to be the strongest. I've also got a rock melon in here that has grown all on its own. That might have been from kitchen scraps we put in this garden. Oh, here we go. Here's one here. And again, you can see that this one suffered a bit of damage from something that's eating them. So it's the price you pay when you don't use herbicides. But I think it's a price worth paying. So also in these raised garden beds, we've got capsicums. And these capsicums came up by themselves, out of the garden bed beside me actually. So they must have been kitchen scraps. So there's one here, another one here, and another weaker one just here. So there's quite a few in this garden bed, and they're just growing away. We're keeping them secure from insects at this stage, or at least bigger insects. And eventually we'll rip those covers off and we'll let nature take its course. Also in this garden bed, we've got some spinach. So it's these ones here. They're doing okay. Now those plants have got a little bit bigger, we'll be able to put a little bit more mulch around them. When we first put them in, they're really quite small. So, and speaking about tomatoes, I've just noticed that there's a few more that are just kicking off in here. So that's a tomato, and that's a tomato, and that's a tomato, and that one is too. So, oh, and there's another one just in here, and another one there. So look, tomatoes seem to just love this environment here. Must be the climate, maybe. They also might like the mulch, hey? So just standing underneath our well-built, very, very cheap cover, made of 90mm downpipe and a couple of upright posts, and a little bit of this sort of green mesh, but it certainly makes a difference, so well worth the effort, despite it not looking like it might hold a lot of weight, but it seems to work okay. So these are cabbages, and the cabbages are enjoying living here as well, so they're growing pretty well. We actually got these as seedlings, and they've grown and they've responded really well to this environment. Haven't had to do a lot with them at this stage, but they're looking good. We just need to keep an eye on those pests. I was just having a look at the sweet potato and I found a couple of insects which were grasshoppers, so we had to get rid of them. So in this garden bed we've got silver beet, and you might recall from some of our earlier videos, we grow this sort of stuff for ourselves, but we also grow it for the cattle. They love it. They really, really love it. I'm not sure whether it changes the taste of their meat, but they certainly love it. They'll love reaching over the fence and with their mouth open, ready for some. So we like to grow plenty. So that's one way to get rid of it, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing. So when we cut this sort of stuff, we just really cut a couple of the leaves off it and then feed those to the cattle, and then it regrows, and then we feed it to the cattle again. So it's sort of a perpetuating plant for a little while. So that's pretty good. And over here we've got cauliflower. That cauliflower is responding pretty well. Pretty happy with that. Not impacted by any insects at all, so that's nice. Can't see any. Oh, actually, now that I have a look, now after I've said that, I can see that we've had something having a bit of a feed on this one. So could be grasshoppers. Anyway, I just need to be a little bit more vigilant on what's happening around the garden, just to make sure that if I see those insects I can intervene as quickly as possible and maybe address it by removing them. And finally in this bed we've got some more spinach, so Popeye would be happy. So these are looking nice. So it makes such a difference having a cover over them. It just seems to take the sting out of the sun and It just probably allows it to stay a bit more moist as well, because the wind's not sort of shooting across the top of the beds, so it disturbs that. So that's the walkthrough of our orchard and our garden. Now, I had one question this morning. I was thinking about this when I started to think about the video, and that was, is what we've got here considered a food forest? I hear that term quite a bit, and I'm not sure. So anybody out there that's got a view on whether or not it is a food forest, I'd really appreciate you letting me know. I've looked it up and I'm still not convinced one way or the other, so I would appreciate your feedback. Okay, well, thank you for watching. As always, if you like this sort of content, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and share those videos around, and also like this video. And if there is anything that you would like to see around the farm or around the garden, or if you've got any other questions, please feel free to leave those down below in the comments, and I'll get back to those as soon as I can. And Sam loves the garden too.